Are you tired of the marketing guessing game? Does your website feel more like a digital billboard than a client magnet? If you're nodding along, you're not alone. And it's time to stop the uncertainty and start getting real results. Let's talk about your marketing spend. Are you just shelling out money every month and crossing your fingers? Do you ever wonder what impact your marketing is really having on your revenue? Well, it's time to take the guesswork out of the equation with Rise Up Media. We've been working with them for over a year, and the feedback from our fellow members has been fantastic. Rise Up Media is here to take your marketing to the next level. They'll even perform a full audit of your online presence, giving you the good, the bad, and even let you in on what your competition is up to that you're missing out on. And the best part, there's no obligation, no catch, no pressure. If you decide to work with them, their contracts are month to month. That's right. No long-term commitments tying you down. So what are you waiting for? To learn more about how Rise Up Media can transform your firms, visit riseupmedia.com/maxlaw, and Rise is spelled with a Z. riseupmedia.com/maxlaw.
This is Maximum Lawyer with your host, Tyson Mutrix.
So Jeff, you're not just an attorney, you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, and even a franchise owner. So can you high level walk us through your journey and how you went from engineering to law to building intellectual strategies?
Yeah, sure. I'm messed up, I guess. I really like to learn. I'm just literally, I'm a learner. I've been back to school a few times. If you look at my resume, I'd go back again if my wife would let me, but I'm really just a learner. So I went through engineering. I kind of decided I don't want to become an engineer, but I want to go through engineering so that I can then go into business. I applied to a bunch of great business schools right out of engineering, and they all said, no, you need 3 or 4 years of experience, come back later, except one school that said, nah, don't bother reapplying. And then in the meantime, while I was, on my kind of 3 or 4 year plan to work and go back and reapply to those schools, somebody kind of came to me and said, hey, you should go to law school, become a patent attorney. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but sounds interesting. Sounds like it's in demand. Let's do it. And then, 10 years or so after law school, I went back and, did my MBA and really shifted my career. So it's, I work with innovators, people who create, and I feel like I've got some of that in me. I like to explore. I like to experiment. I like to learn. And it's just led me on this path that's gone several places.
Yeah, it's really kind of a cool concept when it comes to a fractional legal team, because you've heard of like fractional CFOs, fractional COOs, and all that. It's really kind of interesting what you've built. And was there some sort of defining moment or some sort of frustration that you had that you experienced that pushed you to create something that's really completely different, something I've not seen before?
Yes, probably a couple things that added up. I ran my own practice for a while, had a couple of associates and staff that worked with me, and I wanted to get out of this patent niche into something more more business, generally. And because I saw my innovative clients doing cool inventions, but also cool businesses that were a lot broader. So that's when I went back up MBA. But I think a couple points in time that really got me to where I'm at right now. And believe me, I'm still on a learning curve and innovating and, kind of evolving with the process. But I think we're at a good spot. But when I went in-house, so I went from running my own practice, I went in-house, and 2 weeks in, I said, this is the wrong way to practice. What have I been doing the last 10 years? And I think most people I've talked to who've gone from private practice to in-house have said something similar. And it's kind of like having a baby. I say that to some of my friends who've never been in-house, and I don't think they believe me, but you don't know what it's like to have a baby until you have a baby, right? It doesn't quite connect. And you just don't quite know what it's like to go in-house until you've been in-house. And so when you go in-house, you just start seeing differently. In fact, one time was maybe a couple times actually, I was doing things and I'm like, these guys are going to fire me. I'm doing this like a law firm attorney would do it. And that's not what they want, right? They want faster. They want more succinct. They want you to jump from topic to topic to topic, depending on how many attorneys you have in your team. And so it's a different type of practice. But that was like the first moment I'm like, I've been practicing with the same types of clients on the outside, maybe the wrong way for what I should be doing on the inside. And so when I left that job, I went and I kind of just fell into a fractional role. We called it outside general counsel at the time because I was going from an employee to a contracted employee is all. And I watched some other friends doing that. I joined some groups doing that. And I realized fractional general counsel roles, it's just a recipe for burnout. Just like, if you go to big law, it's pretty much a recipe for burnout because, good attorneys get good clients. And the whole concept is you have me part of the time. I grow with you. Well, if you have 3 or 4 clients all growing, it doesn't take long to see that they're going to grow and you're going to be in that burnout phase again. And if that's not what you want, then you might be in the wrong spot. So that was a key for me. I'm like, how do I, I like the fractional. How do I transition from this solo fractional to something that's sustainable, really?
What I'm very curious. Do you use any sort of fractional services yourself, like fractional CFO or anything like that? I
just brought on a fractional chief revenue officer, so we'll see how that goes. But I do, yes.
That's interesting. Okay, hey, you're it's kind of like a practice what you preach almost kind of a thing. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yes, and I actually run my practice with my wife. She's extremely good. She runs our finances and all the organizational stuff in the practice. I keep trying to talk to her about bringing in somebody part-time on the finance side because that's an easy thing to hand off to a lot of people. We're not there yet. That's a conversation we're still having as partners in the business. And so we'll probably bring somebody on at some point, but that's in the future.
We just did a series last week or 2 weeks ago where we brought on, it was 3 couples. They run the firms together in different capacities. Some had where it was both were attorneys, others one was attorney, one was not. It really was kind of interesting. I asked them the same questions, and so each one I think had 20 minutes separately, and then at the end we brought them together for 10 minutes to see how their answers were maybe different. It was a lot of fun. So I am curious, when it comes to running the firm with your spouse, how has that been? Is it what you expected it was going to be? Why did the two of you decide to run the firm together? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so she's not an attorney. She was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. She's extremely smart. She doesn't necessarily give herself credit for all the things she knows how to do really well. And our kids were getting older. We've got 4 kids, and when the youngest was, I guess, starting to go into elementary school and all that stuff, she's like, I think I'm going to go look for a job, find something to do. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Whatever's fulfilling. After a while, she was kind of looking, and I'm like, we're building, like I'm trying to build this thing. It would be awesome to have you build with me. So she's like, I don't know. I kind of want to do my own thing. And then eventually, she came around and she says she loves it now. So I think she's fantastic at it. She's perfect for the role. She's better at a lot of the organizational things than I am. That's her expertise, her zone of genius. So it's good to have her.
Someone please clip that segment and then send it to Jeff's wife, please, because I think it will help. Yeah, very good. But let's shift back to intellectual strategies and the firm name, Intellectual Strategies. That's the firm name, and so it doesn't immediately scream law firm. I love that part of it. Your marketing is also really laser focused. It's focused on founders, disruptors, VC-backed companies, which I think is fantastic. I am curious because you're so intentional about shaping the brand and the model that you have, and so how did you become so intentional about shaping the brand, shaping the model, and that ideal client that you wanted to serve?
Oh, that's another long journey, I think. I mean, believe it or not, it started because of my IP practice. I was helping these big companies like IBM build portfolios of patents, and at one point I'm like, I see the big companies. I help them put patents in their armory, and what does all that mean? But I see my small clients, and I help them put one patent, first patent together, and it's awesome, right? It means everything to them. I've had people come to my office with drinks and champagne, or I'm in Utah, so a lot of times it's apple cider or whatever, sparkling apple cider, and they want to celebrate the fact that this has just been filed, right? Because that's how much it means to them. But as I was going through that, I started thinking, well, how do I figure out, more about IP strategy? And then I realized IP strategy is just one version of general business strategy. And then I started studying business strategy, and that's kind of what led me to go back to my MBA. And when you go look at business strategy, it's one of the most confusing fields out there. Everybody has a different definition. Nobody knows how to describe it in a way that any small business owner can just take it and use it. And so I actually went down this whole path for years, just kind of, intentionally, but tangentially to running a practice. And I said, how do I make this easier for myself, for my clients? I came up with my own definition of strategy, and that's really framed how I've done things in my law firm, Intellectual Strategies, since then. So that's probably the rough version of the story.
Yeah. I'm so curious about like patent trolls. Do you ever deal with like patent trolls? Is that still a big issue? I mean, in the past, I'd heard about it before. Is that even something you have to deal with on a regular basis?
We do deal with people who, I won't get into the definition of patent trolls and all that, but we deal with people who are asserting wild claims based on patents. And it's, we did a case with a client a year or two ago. We finally settled it. And, it comes down to how belligerent people are a lot of times and how much money they have behind their belligerence. And so I think we had a really winning case, but we ended up settling because in the end it was easier and more efficient to do that after some initial fighting than to take it the full way. Although I think we would have won had we taken it all the way. It just would have cost our client a lot more, and that's wasn't necessarily in their best interest.
Was it harder for you in that situation to advise them that it's better to probably settle, or do you think it was harder for them to accept the fact that they need to settle? I'm curious about that because I'm sure it probably pissed you off.
You know what's funny is I don't do litigation myself. I brought a friend in because we had, when you're doing fractional, and I was like, I don't do litigation. I don't want to do litigation, but fractional, you're their guy. And so problems come up. You're like, enough problems are coming up. I should just bring someone who does litigation onto the team because that's kind of the whole model of a fractional legal team. Anyway, the litigator I brought on, he is the most level-headed guy that I know. And I get fired up, like you said, somebody files something. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This does not make sense. It's like, we got to fight this stuff. I don't necessarily take that emotion to the client. I try to take them something a little bit more tempered and say, hey, here are your options. But it fires the clients up too, because they're like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense. Like they've got this thing and we've got this thing and they're totally different. And so clients get emotional, and then I have to kind of back down a little bit. I'm like, well, here are your options. Here's how we should look at it. Here's a recommended course of action. It's easy to get fired up. But I'm glad that I have a counterpart on my team who takes the more formal, very level-headed and smart and strategic role for negotiating with the other litigators who often are more fired up than he is.
I'm glad that this scenario came up because I want to know about the dynamic of how it works when it comes to your model and why it works for clients, because it is interesting because I'm wondering how much clients, whenever they say, they hire you to be their fractional legal team, how much they think, oh, you're going to do everything. Or I wonder, how do you set expectations at the beginning to say, listen, I don't do litigation, but I do have people that we're going to be able to reach out to, and I'm guessing it's going to cost them more money and all that. So how do you explain that to them so that it still makes sense for them that this is still a good model for them?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question because most of the times when you hire an attorney, generally you're like, I hired you, I want him, I want her, and you think that they're going to do everything. Especially small business owners, they're like, I didn't hire. If you go to a large law firm, maybe there's more of an expectation that they hand stuff off to juniors and whatever. But in my experience, they come and they hire, as my wife says, Jeff, they hired you. They want you to be doing this. And so I've had to be very intentional over the last several years saying, hey, we are doing a team model. You're hiring me, of course, but you're getting the whole team. And I explain the benefits to it. But to try to really drive that home with them, I go back to my engineering roots, right? In engineering, I like to see the whole system. I like to lay things out. I like to, put tables together. And so I've done that for a lot of the services we offer, including our fractional legal team stuff, where I just say, hey, let me send you a package. It's got a breakdown of 3 different packages that you can select from. It tells you what's in them, and these are starting points. We customize for each client. We've had two in the last 3 weeks. We've had two great fractional clients come on board, and they're totally different. One of them has a lot of IP stuff that they want included, which we typically, exclude, like litigation and bigger one-off projects are typically excluded from our monthly retainer. But for them, we balance things out and we're including that. The other client, they're further along in their stage. They're out there selling products. They're a bigger company, a lot more revenue as opposed to more of a startup. And so we're doing a lot more full service, spread across the team type of work. There is IP. There is some dispute stuff we're doing. But, so I send them this and I say, hey, here are the packages. Because what I want to do, I want to empower my clients to make informed decisions. And I say, we are probably a really good fit for a lot of people who we're targeting because, we've been very deliberate putting our team together. So if we're having a conversation, there's a really good chance that we have something we can offer you. But if I just go and say, I do a patent, it's $12,000, and you don't know what that means, because that's the past life I was in. I've watched lots of firms do that, and they're like, you need a patent, it's $12,000. You need a whatever. And I'm like, but what are you getting? There's so many different ways you can do that. And so I say, well, here's how I do it. I've got a basic package. It includes these things. I've got a plus package. It includes these. And I've got a premium. It includes these. And of course, we can customize these, but let me send you that. We'll start there. You get an idea of what you want, what feels good to you, because, it's going to come down to you want all the services and you want the lowest budget. That's not going to work. But there's going to be some balance in there that does work, and let's figure out where it is.
Can you talk about the pricing strategy? Because that seems to be the most effective strategy when it comes to pricing something like this. And so can you talk about the different tiers and how you came up with those tiers and why you came up with those tiers?
Yeah. So my goal, and this is where me and my wife have different roles, right? My goal is eliminate the billable hour completely. I hate it like most attorneys do. So if I could eliminate it completely, I would totally do that. And I've tried to structure it so that from a client perspective, it's not an hourly thing, because that changes the behaviors of the client and the interactions and how often they call you. I don't want anybody to feel like they shouldn't be calling me because of the way that we bill. That's like counterproductive to the entire reason we have a relationship in the first place. And so I do everything I can to frame it in terms of just flat fees. And, I'm kind of, hey, things will even out as you go. If there's some ups and downs, great. If it trends, we'll switch it. So client facing, it's really not an hourly situation for the most part. Internally, where my wife is tracking and we've got team members working, she's very much on the hour. She's tracking that stuff because we need to know for our own purposes, of course, how to pay our team and all that other stuff. And so she'll track it, and that's how we'll know then if there's trending going up or down, because, as a fractional, we scale with our clients, and hopefully they scale up, but sometimes they scale down too. So we track it internally on an hourly basis to a large extent, but we try to remove the hourly from the client conversations as much as possible.
I don't know if you saw this study that came out. Now, take it with a grain of salt. It was commissioned by Lexus, and they hired an outside company to determine how much AI was reducing the need for companies to hire attorneys. And so they did it through a few different models, and they created this fictitious model, and so that's why I'm a little skeptical of the data. But what they found was that there's a 13% reduction in the company reaching out to the outside legal counsel for assistance. And I wonder if you've seen that in any capacity where the people that you represent reach out to you less because maybe they're using AI to get some answers to their questions.
I do see that. I don't know that it's reducing the workload, because AI, in a lot of instances, it's garbage in, garbage out, or, not garbage. Maybe it's great input in and great outputs. But for most people, unless you know how to ask the questions right, you're not asking the right questions. So I do see it. We're starting to integrate it more. I use AI. I was on it this morning quite a bit, some work and some marketing and some other stuff. I use it daily. We're encouraging our team to use it. We're looking into some products, but we've done some demos. Frankly, we haven't adopted anything on a large scale because, frankly, when you look past the, kind of the business speak and jargon of even during the demos, what they're really saying is, we can do a pretty good job if your expectation is, a first year associate who's, in his first 6 months of practice, and we don't, to which I say, great. I hope it gets better soon, but we don't hire first year associates. Like we can't do that in our practice. It's either because I'm not a great, I don't have patience to train people, or it just doesn't work for our clients, right, financially. But so we don't hire first year associates. So I haven't figured out how to plug in a first year associate AI tool into a role that we don't have for people even. So
that's pretty interesting. So how do you design this in a way that you can provide a legal service that integrates really deeply with that client's business, but you're still able to do it on a fractional budget and it's a fractional in scope? Because one of my biggest concerns when it comes to any sort of fractional anything is that they don't quite understand the business. So I wonder how you're able to integrate in a way where you're able to understand the business and really understand their needs so you can advise them properly.
So there's an internal fight that happens with me all the time. And that internal fight is all about the engineer saying everything needs to be perfectly defined and known and risks identified. And then there's what I'll call the MBA inside of me that says, hey, let's try it. Let's hypothesize. Let's take some action, see what happens, and evaluate and, pivot if we need to. And so really that MBA side has for the way that I work, has to control a little bit more of the engineering side, so that I go and I say, because every company is different. They're all innovators. They're doing stuff that hasn't been done before. Some of the processes are the same, but they're literally creating teams in ways that teams haven't been created. They're creating products in ways products haven't existed before. So they're creating new problems and risks that haven't existed. And so, for me to think that I'm going to engineer this, down to the fourth, decimal point or something, it's just not going to work. So I take a very relaxed approach in a way, and I say, let's meet often. Let's communicate well. Let's talk high level strategy, and let's, make sure that your team, it's just not just CEO talking to me, right? Talking to Jeff. Let's make sure your team feels comfortable talking to my team as if they were just walking down the hall, poking their head in the door and saying, hey, Danielle, I got a question. What, do you have a second? It's that's how teams operate well, right? It's just having fluid communications, and that's been my approach at a really high level.
There's got to be, as you hire attorneys, I wonder how much when people hire you as a fractional CFO that they want you as the actual, or not CFO, fractional attorney, fractional legal team, however you want to put it. But do you sell it as a team, or you're getting the team to help? Does that help prevent them wanting Jeff every single time? Or because how do you deal with that?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Like I used to be more hesitant about selling the team aspect of it, and now I'm as bold as I can be, because I want it to be clear that there's people don't realize it, but there's value in having access to the team. You don't want one attorney with one specialty giving you advice across every discipline in your business. They just don't know it. And while that happens a lot in small businesses and it's worked, it's not the best way to do it. The best way is to get a bunch of, experts across different areas that every business needs. Every startup has 20 different areas that they're dealing with. And so to have people who are more expert in each area as it comes up, why wouldn't you do that if you can do that? That's been my driver. I'm like there's nothing about this that doesn't make sense. It's maybe a little bit more fuzzy around the edges sometimes, and maybe there are people who say, "Well, I want you." And I have clients who they'll say, "Hey, for this project, I want you on it." And I'll accommodate that to the extent that I can. But that's not every project, and I have to be very deliberate when people hire me, because they're just not used to hiring attorneys in a team setting like we're doing. It's just new.
Yeah. I'm very curious if you've learned anything about selling legal services, and when it comes to like your clients, like have you learned anything from your clients? You know, they could be founders. A lot of them are disruptors. They're creative types. So I wonder if you've learned anything about selling, like specifically selling legal services from your clients that's made you a better law firm owner.
Gosh, I might have to like dissect that question a little bit. I don't think of myself as a sales guy. So let me say that up front. I think I'm good at selling legal services, but that's because I believe in the way we're doing it. But I don't profess to know sales tactics and techniques and stuff like that. Despite my MBA, that's not where I focused on anything. So
Sure.
when I go into a conversation, like the conversation you and I are having is a lot like the conversation I would be having with a potential client. And I just say, hey, here's how our team works. Here are the people that are on our team. You know, where we focus the conversation typically is on, you know, the business milestones that are coming up in your business, or maybe a few past hiccups that need some cleanup. And I say, well, if those are the business milestones, how do I, as your legal counsel, come in and start to frame some legal work into those business milestones to support you achieving those in time? And so, by the time you've spent 30 minutes having that conversation, I don't think it's a matter of, now I'd like to get a commitment from you to purchase our services. It's just, you've already started the relationship in my mind. And if it's a good fit, it will continue. And if it's not a good fit, it won't. And that's okay too, right? People should hire the people that they communicate well with. And, I'm a pretty easy guy to communicate with a lot of times. But I'm not the right fit for everybody, and that's okay.
I like it sounds like you're willing to walk away from a client if you think that they're going to be a trouble client, or you maybe just can't help them. Obviously that you're not going to want to represent someone that you can't help. But at what point were you comfortable with that? Because at the beginning, a lot of times people want to take everything that comes through the door. So when were you comfortable with being able to just walk away?
Yeah, I am for being an introverted engineer inside of me. I have this weird, need to develop relationships. And so, because there's some childhood trauma behind that probably, but like all good personality characteristics. But so I try really, really hard to establish relationships and to maintain those relationships. And I probably, I will turn people away if they're not a good fit, because I know that that's my tendency. Like, I don't want to use the word attached, but I don't want to develop a relationship and then feel like, because in fact, one of my attorneys, the litigator, Trevor, he says, I know you pretty well. You have this hyper accountability issue. You are always trying to take accountability for the things that are anywhere within the realm of your influence. And it's true. It's just how I operate. And so when a problem happens, my first go-to isn't, man, they really messed up. It's like, okay, that happened, and what could I have done differently on my end? What do I have control over that I could do differently to fix that? And so, for example, I have a client that I loved working with. We worked on several businesses with them for 4 or 5 years. As an individual, I really I like the team. I like the founder. And when they got into some, we should have scaled back our services, right? Because they were in these issues where payment was a problem. And instead, I offered to continue providing services at the same scale, partly because there was some litigation going on. And, then you're having these internal conversations like, what are my professional responsibilities to, finish this litigation versus terminate the relationship? But so all that's happening, and, it took me a long time to actually fire the client. And I know that about myself, which is why I'm hesitant now to get into relationships where there's a risk that, the relationship might not work out. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It definitely does. Let's shift gears. I want to talk about leadership with you. And I wonder how you've had to adapt your leadership style as you started to grow with the firm, as the firm has begun to grow. So I guess, have you had to adapt your leadership style, and in what ways?
Yeah, I have to, and I don't profess to be like a standout prototype for leadership. It's funny because last year we've got 5 attorneys on our team. We've had a few come in and out, and last year I did these regular monthly meetings with the team. Hey, let's talk about how do we do this, and what do we do on a strategy call, and what does client experience really mean, and provide just things about the practice. And this year I didn't put any on the schedule this year. And I just had my team come back and say, hey, can we do some more of those? We really need to have one of those on XYZ. And I thought, yeah, we probably do. So I don't know that speaks about my leadership style, but it shows that in a team setting, people look to have kind of, I don't know if it's leadership or even just, build community. And, by nature, because I started the firm, I guess, they look to me to kind of head up that community. So.
Yeah.
It's probably something I could work on quite a bit more, though.
Well, the reason I wanted to ask you about that is because you had mentioned that you had the attorney come to you about your hyper accountability. And to me, that seems like a pretty healthy culture because you're accountable as the owner, but they recognize that too. So I think that's to me, that shows that you're probably doing the right things.
It probably shows that I'm pretty transparent, at least.
Yeah. I want to talk about the franchise. Tell me about the franchise ownership. What's that all about?
Oh man, that might be another episode. It was, listen, like I said, I experiment, right? When I built my first house, I'm like, I'm an electrical engineer. I want to wire my house up just because I want to know, at the time I was designing, wiring schematics for commercial buildings and these large homes. And I'm like, well, it'd be great to know what that's like. And so I did that. And I went into the lighting store for the 17th time. And the guy's like, hey, I've been meaning to ask you, how big is this house? I'm like, no, it's like 2,200 square feet. So it was not a big house, but apparently I was inefficient in some of the materials I used. But, I learned something, right? And so there's this part of me that's like, you're helping these companies, you're doing this stuff. I've done a couple side projects here and there, and I've had some work out okay, and I've had some that haven't worked out, and I've closed them. The franchise is just one of those side things. And long story short, without going into details, a lot of franchises are sold as semi-absentee businesses and end up that they are not semi-absentee businesses. They are pretty much owner-operator businesses. We're in a mode with this side business of figuring that out and how to, of our own accountability, I guess, make that more of a semi-absentee business than it has been. And we've gotten to the point where it is for us, but now we have to work on the profitability of it too. So it's been an interesting project. I'll say that and leave it.
Yeah. Well, how is that experience? I'll transition this back to the firm. How do you think that experience has informed how you approach actually creating processes and systems for the firm?
Perfect question. I mean, that's exactly what I've taken out of it. And, my wife and I were talking about this last night. That we bought into a franchise because we thought, processes, systems, proven business model, all that. I don't think that we bought what we thought we were buying. But whether that existed before or whether we're creating it now, that's like the lifeblood of a semi-absentee business or a business in general, right? Like I always talk about my law firm. I tell people, hey, I'm trying to build this as a business, not as a law firm, not a typical you eat what you kill and you work, you get paid for the hours that you work, and you just exist to be an attorney until you stop being an attorney, and then you pretty much don't exist anymore. Like that's not what I want. I want to build something that is sustainable, right? Get back to the strategy. I want to build something sustainable, whether it's a little franchise fitness business or whether it's a growing law firm. It should be sustainable. Otherwise, you're just trading time for money, and that's, in my mind, not necessarily a winning proposition.
It makes me think about how, and I was having this conversation yesterday, but it makes me think about how Japanese companies view the future and actually scaling their companies. And a lot of them they look at it in like 200 to 300 years in the future, what it should look like. And I think it's really an amazing way of looking at things because to me, it takes a lot of pressure off of you. We're like, okay, I'm building this thing. And the way I put it yesterday, let's say you grew your firm 2 to 3% every single year for 200 years. Like, what would your company look like? So you're not worried about, doubling revenue every single year. You're not worried about that, right? You think more about kind of like compounded interest, and because everyone's wanting to grow as quickly as possible. But what if you took this more like steady approach and, okay, we're building this thing for not just my children, not their children, not their children, not their children, but you're going down, and deeper down into your genealogy, I guess. But I do think it's a really interesting way of looking at things. So have you ever thought about something like that?
I love that. I haven't used that term or heard. I don't think I've heard that information about Japanese business, vision. But I love it. It makes me think. Businesses grow in spurts, right? It's just in a way steady spurts. You're like, we want steady 10% growth or 50% growth or whatever that is for your business every year. But no business ever grows that steady. It's really steady over time. But it was really spurty, in the moment. And so I haven't thought in 200, 300-year timelines, and I don't think I'm capable of that. My engineering brain would start saying, well, what are all the factors,
Yes.
So, but what I do is I think the analogy to that I do use is going back to sustainability. How do I build a business that's sustainable? And I view that the metric for that in my mind is enterprise value. If you have a sustainable business, it will have enterprise value. It will also probably be sustainable independent of any one single individual in the business. And most law firms are not. And that's why I didn't name my law firm Holman and something. I said, hey, I want to be different and I want it to sound like a business. I see these friends who have consulting businesses and they go out and nobody is asking them what their hourly rate is. They land a $700,000 contract for results, not for hours. And the results in a consulting business are pretty questionable a lot of times anyways, right? It's how did you gave us results to tell us that it's inconclusive, but they still get paid their money because that's the value they brought. I think lawyers really need to figure out how to do something more along those lines instead of being, arguing over whether or not a contract review should take 2.5 or 3 hours or whatever. I mean, who wants to do that their whole life? Not me.
Yeah, no kidding. You use the phrase that I don't think anyone's ever mentioned on the podcast is enterprise value. I think that's a great. I love that phrase. Really, really good. Term's awesome. In what ways do you think firms can increase their enterprise value and get to that point where they can sort of be that absentee owner, where that almost sounds bad, but like where you're still making money from the firm, and the firm can live without you?
First of all, I just want to point out, I love that you actually said it sounds kind of bad to have an absentee owner law firm. And my gut reaction to that is why? Why is that bad? Every other business out there, like you don't hire a marketing agency and demand that the CEO do all of your work and, do your paid ads. And like, they don't do that. But in law firms, we think that's normal. And we've got to get away from that, frankly. But it's so prevalent that as attorneys, we all feel it. We've all felt it, and we still feel it even when we're trying not to. So, having pointed that out, what was the question?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad that you pointed that out too, because it is something we need to get away from. So let's stay on this, and I'll come back to that question though. How much do you think that has to do with us like putting our freaking names on our law firms?
Oh, a lot. Attorneys go to law school. At least this is what we all believe, right? And since it's us believing it about ourselves, there's probably some truth to it. We go to law school because we're kind of that maybe slightly risk averse personality. We're maybe a little exuberant sometimes, or argumentative, or whatever. We've got some characteristics that attract us to the law, and one of those I think is stability and prestige. I guess that's two of those: stability and prestige. And so, when prestige is part of your equation, who doesn't want to hear somebody, praise you about the work you've done and then pay you a big fat check? Everybody loves that, but that's the golden handcuffs, and that's not enterprise. There's no enterprise value in that. There's maybe personal reputation and personal value, but no enterprise value. They're not aligned.
So let's go back to enterprise value. So the question I was asking about was what are the elements of a firm that would increase its enterprise value and allow the law firm owner to be absentee?
The entire business model has to change. I would start with something simpler, but the real answer is the business model has to change. This is why when I look out there and I say, okay, I'm doing a business model, I'm sharing it. I've been on I don't know, 50 podcasts so far in less than a year. And I'm trying to share it everywhere, right? Because I want the word to get out there. I want to get clients, of course, but I also think people should be practicing in this way. And when I look at it, no big law firm with an established business model is that because of their personalities, they're not going to change their business model to do what we're doing. Now, they could implement it in different ways, but under the existing business models, it just doesn't work. Like, you have to fundamentally change your outlook and how you're doing stuff. You might also have to, remove your ego from it. I like having good relationships with smart people and clients, but on the one hand, it's not one of the drivers for me personally. Like, I don't need that to feed my ego. I think highly of myself regardless. So,
as you should,
as my wife would say. But no, I think the business model really has to change because business models are almost always set up to they're based on hourly billing, they're based on hierarchical organizational structures, and they're based on very intimate client relationships. And if you've worked in a law firm, you've seen some of the attorneys, and a lot of attorneys are this way to some degree or another. They're extremely protective of their territory. And, I've had people yell at me about stuff because they thought I was infringing on their territory. It's just like, okay, so what I've had to do is I guess maybe to round this out, I've had to change. I'd have had to approach this with a totally different mindset. I want to have open communication, open relationships with my clients so that they know who my team is and they want to talk to my team as much as they want to talk to me. If I'm doing it right, I'm hiring people smarter than me, and my clients want to talk to them more than they want to talk to me, hopefully. But the business model is set up so that it's a team approach. And if we're locked in as a team, if I have one really aggressive, hungry person that I've hired and they're like, I'm going to take my clients, go somewhere else, I'll be like, well, go ahead, but you're like one piece in the team. And if a client really wants to follow you because they love you that much, then they should probably go with you. But chances are, the way we've structured it, one person leaving shouldn't impact most of our client relationships because they hired us so they get the whole team. And one person leaving isn't a team. So it just, the business model itself is just fundamentally different.
Yeah, I agree with you quite a bit on that. How can law firm owners build that mental muscle to make that mindset shift? Because it's been so ingrained. The host that was, or the guest I had before you, he had talked about how the legal industry hasn't changed for like 200 years and it's basically still operating the exact same way. So like there's some things that are just so ingrained in the practice. How does some of these law firm owners make that shift, that mental shift? Because it can be tough for especially the ones that have been doing this for a few decades.
It's very tough. I don't want to downplay this. I literally closed down or altered drastically the law firm that I had pre-fractional team to what it is now. I went back to school for 2 years in a part-time MBA program. I've spent the last 12 years doing like thinking about and reading about, writing about strategy. Like it's not a like a, hey, let's just make a few tweaks in our business and change. I don't think we can. If I had to name one thing that I think would be the trigger point, and this is just me throwing it out there, I haven't thought this through all the way, but I think that the trigger point, get rid of origination fees. This whole idea of origination fees is the lead in to everybody thinking that they own something, with a particular client. It's like, I brought that in, they're my client. I need to get origination fees either, on the first project or the first year or in perpetuity. Like get rid of origination fees. That's the biggest and first impediment, in my mind at least, to creating a team approach.
I just heard a collective groan across the entire legal community whenever you said that.
That's because all of them have built their businesses, and that's exactly how they grow their teams. I see these other law firms out there, and this isn't to knock them. They've chosen a different business model, right? Those business models rely on origination fees to attract laterals to come in and bring their business with them, so that they can grow a bigger law firm. But are they actually growing a bigger law firm with a larger per partner enterprise value? I don't think so. I think they're just growing a bigger law firm with a bigger overall enterprise value, but probably this more or less the same per partner enterprise value.
Yeah. And if that partner leaves, you've now lost the firm as a whole, the company as a whole has lost a tremendous amount of value based on one freaking person as opposed to the firm as a whole. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant thought.
easy come, easy go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about the marketing of the podcasting strategy that you're talking about. But before I do that, though, if people want to reach out to you and they want to ask you questions about intellectual strategies, or if they just want to connect with you directly about marketing or running a firm, what's the best way of getting a hold of you?
LinkedIn, probably. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. I'm pretty active there. Send me a non-solicitation type of invite, and I'll respond to it and connect with you for sure. For if there are clients out there that hear this, or partners, people that say, "Hey, we just had a client that got hired on that they're transitioning from a very large, great, respectable law firm to us because they're moving everything to fractional model." And I met with the partner at that law firm, and he had a great kind of orientation meeting for me. Hey, here's where the business is at, and he said, "Hey, we should talk, and we should figure out. There's probably opportunities for us because their model is different. Probably opportunities for us and for you to maybe think about working together on some of these clients that could use your in-house skills and kind of act as an intermediary on a lot of the matters that." And kind of let the big matters bubble up to the large law firm. So if there are potential clients, or if there are law firm owners out there who say, "Hey, this would be a great partnership to integrate into what we're doing," reach out to me on my website. Schedule a strategy call. My calendar's on my website. You can talk to me directly, and I just like talking to people that are doing cool stuff.
Love it. As do I. That's why I love this show. I get to talk to some really cool people like you. So that's awesome. But I want to talk about the podcasting strategy, like your marketing strategy in general. I know you do a lot on LinkedIn, but you said you've done about 50 in the last year or so. I think that's great. Is the ROI, has the ROI been there? Do you think it's been an effective strategy for you to bring in new clients? I'm very curious about this strategy.
As a podcast guest, I hired an agency. It's been a great experience. I don't think there's a way to calculate the ROI in a positive way yet, although the cost has been manageable. The financial costs have been manageable, and the time cost is, because of how I structure things with what I do, has also been manageable for me. I am shifting though. I've got 20, 25 more podcasts on my schedule through the end of the year. And we'll probably keep doing that. But I'm also going to start my own podcast because I think there's a way to be really deliberate in reaching out to from a client perspective that is a lot harder to do as a guest. Although I really appreciate being a guest on shows like yours because the message is really important to me. Even if the only thing people take away from this is this guy's kind of crazy, but really passionate about this fractional model. And there's a few points he made that make sense. Like, I think that's valuable. I think there's value in the overall community to this becoming more available to people who need it, like startups and scale ups, that are out there. It's a better way to provide services to them, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody in our audience that's going to think you're crazy. I think that they're probably going to agree with you a lot of the things. So I think it's the fact that you're passionate. It definitely shines through. I think that's pretty awesome. But I want to end on this question. Where do you see the biggest opportunities in the next few years for firms that are willing to rethink how they are going to deliver legal services?
Like philosophically, I would say I want to see law firms become partners again with businesses. If I read some anecdotal historical stuff about general counsel, right? And general counsel started out as really a business advisor with legal experience and knowledge. And it shifted. I think the chronology I was reading said something about when these big law firms started implementing it and turning it into a different thing, and then academic institutions got involved, and then all the regulatory agencies in the federal government were created, and it's become something totally different, right? But when it all started, people would bring on an attorney as their general counsel to be an advisor in the business, not just, if I have to talk to you about a legal issue, then I guess I'll do that. And I would love to see philosophically the industry get back to that where business owners want to include legal experts in their business. On a practical level, how do we do that? I don't know how to do that other than what I'm doing.
You know what? That is an honest answer, and that's what I want. I think that's the I don't know part. I think that there's so many things that are unknown that over the next few years that in a normal decade, things were unknown. When AI is progressing as quickly as it is, it's even more unknown. So I think that that's a very honest answer. But Jeff, I really appreciate you doing this. It's a lot of podcasts that you're doing, so that's pretty incredible. But I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. I can tell you're passionate about what you do, and so anything we can help to do to promote you, just let me know.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure being on your show, and I love the conversation.
If your law firm is running strong, but you're ready to unlock that next level of growth, this is your moment. MaxLawCon 2025 is happening this October, and we just dropped the full speaker lineup. You'll hear directly from law firm owners and experts who are building thriving, future-focused firms and sharing exactly how they're doing it. It's 2 days built to stretch your thinking, feel your momentum, and help you walk away with a clear, energizing plan for what's next. And now you can make it a 3-day experience. Mastermind Day tickets are officially live. It's a full day of focused hot seats where you'll get personal insight and strategy from your coach and a room full of other growth-minded law firm owners. Last thing, there are only 2 weeks left to save $500 off your MaxLawCon ticket before general admission pricing kicks in. Don't wait on this. Head to maxlawcon.com to see the full speaker lineup and lock in your spot. We'll see you in October.